It all began with a whisper, a rumor about a horrifying discovery. The news spread like wildfire, carrying a paralyzing fear. A secret, hidden in plain sight, had come to light. A dismembered body, a shocking testament to human cruelty. The air was thick with unspoken tension. There was no escape from the grim reports, the stories of unexplained disappearances. Even the ancient temples, silent witnesses to centuries of history, seemed to sense the shift. Bangkok, a city pulsing with the rhythm of life, stood still in anticipation. Joyful laughter and the shouts of street vendors were replaced by anxious murmurs. The nightlife, once a symbol of the city's energy, had now become the backdrop for an unfolding tale of a serial killer with an iron chest, for the second time in its history. Over 100 years ago, Bangkok became the stage for a chilling drama, starring perhaps one of the most infamous serial killers in the country's history, Boonpeng Heap Lek, also known as Iron Chest Boonpeng. Masterfully playing the role of a monk, someone no one would ever suspect, he and his accomplices took lives, dismembered their victims, and disposed of their bodies in canals, rivers, and ponds, sealing them inside iron chests. Who would have thought that a century later, he would have a prolific successor, Apichai Ongwisit, who would earn a similar nickname, the Iron Chest? There is a saying that children pay for the sins of their fathers, and in this case, the phrase fits perfectly. Apichai was the grandson of the renowned Thai businessman Banthun Ongwisit. It was Banthun who made the family name famous, bringing it prestige. But unfortunately, he could not protect it from his own son and grandson. In Thailand, Banthun is considered a legend, especially among the older generation. He played a significant role in shaping the country's culture, giving a powerful boost to the film industry. After World War II, he wrote scripts, worked as a director, producer, and actor in various plays and films. With the wealth he accumulated, he invested heavily in commercial real estate, building theaters, a cinema, and a highly profitable shopping center, the Ongwisit Yambangkai Shopping Center. Sadly, Banthun's son, Chelermche Ongwisit, inherited his father's fortune and properties, but not his passion for creation, leading to horrifying consequences. On a Friday in early October 1983, Bangkok police received a report about a mutilated body discovered in a drainage canal, stuffed inside a television box. Inside the box, only the torso remained. The killer had either cut off or hacked away the head and limbs, but the police quickly found them inside a suitcase abandoned on a road near a police station. Detectives traced the television box to the store that had sold it. It turned out that the buyer was Phayong Santhawi, the brother-in-law of Chelermche Ongwisit. Phayong was brought in for questioning, where he confessed that he had found a dead 15-year-old girl in his apartment and disposed of the body. Officers searched his apartment, located inside a shopping center owned by the Ongwisit family. The place was spotless, shining with an artificial cleanliness. But the police weren't fooled. They dismantled the ceiling and water pipes and found a collarbone. It belonged to the same girl whose body parts had been dumped in the suitcase and TV box. The murder was now linked to Phayong's apartment, but was he really the killer? Phayong insisted that he was. He claimed that the girl had been a homeless troublemaker, causing mischief at the family's shopping center, banging on an expensive custom-made aquarium. When Phayong confronted her and told her to stop, she talked back to him. He lost his temper, dragged her into his apartment, and hit her. She fell, struck her head on the edge of a table, and died. Panicked, he got rid of the body, scattering the remains across Bangkok using the car of his sister's husband, Chelermche Ongwisit. Shockingly, Phayong confessed to the brutal murder almost immediately, but the police didn't believe him. At the very least, he had no idea where exactly he had disposed of the suitcase and the television box, and yet he insisted he had acted alone. But the investigators already knew who in the family had the kind of violent temper to kill a teenager over an aquarium, no matter how expensive it was. It was always Chelermche who lost control, who picked fights with customers who had simply come to buy fish at his shopping center. Detectives invited Chelermche to the station for questioning. He showed up but denied any involvement in the crime. The police had no solid evidence against him, so they had no choice but to let him go. However, literally the next day, Chelermche was shot dead. Suspicion fell on his wife, but before investigators could question her, she fled the country, taking their younger daughter with her. She left behind her son, 4-year-old Apichai Ongwisit, in the care of his aunt, along with a small sum of cash. Little Apichai was left without a family in a vast, noisy city. Not much is known about his early years. His relatives apparently did not shower him with love, and he spent a lot of time on his own, wandering the streets alone. It's unclear what was going through his mind at the time, but as he grew older, he learned that his father, suspected of murdering a teenage girl, had been killed, likely by his mother, who had fled Thailand, taking only his younger sister with her. While this alone may not have determined what would happen later, it's hard to deny the impact such circumstances could have had on a child's psyche. At school, Apichai wasn't popular either. For one, of course, everyone knew about his family, and secondly, he was a rather frail boy, unable to stand up for himself. But don't rush to feel sorry for him, because Apichai came of age and inherited everything that was rightfully his, including the family mansion, which the locals had nicknamed the House of Horrors. The boy who had once been bullied by his peers transformed into a man ready to explode at any moment. And given that money can sometimes help one slip out of legal trouble, many of his misdeeds went unpunished. He became increasingly brazen until he finally crossed the line. In 2008, the 28-year-old man was arrested for assault. After serving 3 years in prison, he was released, only to be arrested twice the following year, once for illegal possession of firearms and again for the abduction of a 17-year-old girl. What's more, when the police came to his house, he tried to shoot his way out. Inside his mansion, authorities discovered a vast arsenal of weapons, both firearms and bladed weapons, along with handcuffs, bulletproof vests, tasers, and illegal substances that he had been selling. Apichai spent another 6 years in prison, but when he was released in 2018, he had no intention of learning from his mistakes, and he continued selling illegal substances, mixing them with caffeine. Why? Just because. It wasn't his only or even primary source of income. He still had the entire family fortune, including a building with 100 apartments that had always been in high demand and never stood empty, at least not until 2018, when Apichai was released from prison and started showing his true nature. Under the influence of illegal substances, he got into altercations with tenants. Not just fistfights, though. Apichai always carried a gun. Tenants began to fear him and quietly moved out. His neighbors weren't thrilled about their unpredictable neighbor either. They were scared not only of Apichai himself, but also of the horrors that took place on his estate. For instance, he began breeding predatory fish, like alligator gar, in the 3 ponds surrounding his mansion. When ordering pizza, he might fire a few bullets at the delivery driver just for fun. And if some unlucky driver happened to cross his path on the narrow road leading to his house, at best, Apichai would start shooting into the air. A real pleasant guy. No one knew how to stop him, and no one could have imagined that it would be his closest friend who would succeed in doing so. In prison, Apichai met a man named Chalamkon, who had been repeatedly arrested for crimes, mostly related to the distribution of illegal substances. The two men quickly found common ground, and after Chalamkon was released, he went straight to his friend, the one with money, drugs, and the ability to help him find work. Apichai hired him as a garden handyman. They soon became inseparable, spending every day together, both for fun and for their shady dealings. That was until January 2020, when Chalamkhan was arrested on charges related to illegal substances. It's worth noting that Thai authorities are extremely strict with those involved in this underground business. If it involves the most dangerous and potent of such substances, the punishment can be severe, up to and including the death penalty. It was no surprise that after getting caught red-handed, Chalamchon was willing to do or say anything to avoid a lethal injection or reduce his prison sentence. He admitted that he worked as a guard at Apichai Ongwisit's house, something that immediately caught the officers' interest. They had long wanted to charge Apichai for producing illegal substances, but Chalamchon didn't stop there. He revealed that he could provide information on an unsolved murder case, and that was an offer the officers simply couldn't refuse. Chalamkhan confessed that in 2019, he had helped Apichai bury a young woman's body near the pond behind his house, and in his opinion, it wasn't the first. On January 9, 2020, more than 24 officers arrived at the home of the influential heir. Another attempt by the man to offer armed resistance to the police failed. His gun jammed, and Apichai was brought down to the floor, naked, covered only by a towel. Meanwhile, at the location indicated by Chalamchon, officers dug up a locked iron box. When it was opened, they found a woman's body inside. After that, Apichai stopped trying to hide and told the detectives the name of the girl, Warrenthorne Chayachet, affectionately called Nong Kukik, or simply Kik. Apichai was a regular at the nightclubs of Bangkok, and it was at one of these that he met 22-year-old Warrenthorne, or Kik, who worked there in 2019. It should be noted that Thailand is known for its adult entertainment industry, Although many of these activities are illegal by law, they remain extremely popular behind closed doors. And since they bring in a lot of money to the country, thanks to tourists, the authorities turn a blind eye to it. Therefore, it's easy to mistake the women working in Thai bars for night butterflies. Some may indeed be, but there are others whose job is simply to keep the visitors company, entertain them in the club, make them want to come back, and encourage them to order more drinks. This was Kik's job. She chose this line of work not out of choice. The girl had come to Bangkok from a small village in Thailand, where she had been raised by her loving grandmother. However, after her divorce from her husband, the family had no income. If the girl hadn't worked, her children would have had no roof over their heads. Needless to say, when the wealthy Apichai Ongbijit showed interest in her, Kik was glad to spend time with him. Apichai and Kik spent hours together at the club, drinking and getting to know each other better. Eventually, the girl began to stay overnight at his mansion. Whether she truly liked him or not, we will never know, but the situation suited both of them. However, Kik soon discovered that Apichai's inherited money was not his only source of income. The man not only sold illegal substances, but he also used them himself. Unfortunately, due to this, the already short-tempered Apichai became simply unbearable, jealous, controlling, and aggressive. To make sure Kik didn't talk to other men, he forced her to stay in his house most nights. Kik found herself between two fires. On the one hand, she continued working at the bar, but on the other, she didn't want to upset her boyfriend. She had to severely limit her interactions with other clients, which clearly upset them. It ended in July 2019 when Kik confessed to Apichai that she had been sexually assaulted by him. Although both she and Apichai went to the police, she didn't know or couldn't identify the perpetrator. The police, nevertheless, tried to find the criminal, and to do so, they needed to stay in touch with the victim. However, in August 2019, Kik suddenly stopped responding to all communications from the police. Her relatives could not get in touch with her either. After several days of silence, her family reported her disappearance. However, since she worked in the adult industry, the police weren't in a rush to seriously pursue her case. Unfortunately, this industry goes hand in hand with violence and murder, and since she was intentionally hiding in the shadows, it was incredibly difficult to get justice. The case was considered open, but very little progress had been made in trying to locate Kik, and so her body was found on the grounds of her boyfriend's house. At first, he tried to deny any involvement in the murder, but then changed his story, claiming it was an unfortunate accident. He supposedly loved her to death and didn't want to let her go. However, Kik had decided to return to her ex-husband, something Apichai couldn't tolerate. That's why he forced her to sleep in a small iron box that he kept at home. Night after night, he made her crawl into the tight box and sleep there. But one morning at the end of August 2019, he discovered that she had suffocated. Instead of calling an ambulance and trying to save his beloved, he called his friend and bodyguard, Chalermchon, who helped him dig a grave for her. This is the story that Apichai Ongbijit told the police. But it had little to do with the truth, because Chalermchon got ahead of him, and his version of events seemed much more believable. Chalermchon had repeatedly witnessed Apichai beating Kiki with a metal pipe and chaining her with handcuffs. The punishment could be for anything, even something as minor as Kiki not finishing her food. He was also a witness to how Apichai made her sit in the tight box. Poor Kiki would scream, and if her cries disturbed her boyfriend, he would simply turn up the music. But clearly, one night, Apichai went too far with the punishment. The autopsy revealed that before her death, Kiki had been struck hard with a blunt object. Nearly all her large bones were broken, and her fractured ribs punctured her chest, causing suffocation. Apichai claimed she had approached a high shelf with dumbbells, and one accidentally fell on her chest. However, the autopsy painted a completely different picture. Apichai had beaten the girl with a metal rod, and when that wasn't enough, he used dumbbells. He then bound her hands and feet, shoving her into the box. The next morning, he offered Chalermchon money to help dispose of the body. Chalermchon needed the money and agreed. Apichai hoped the truth would never come out, thinking that Kiki worked in the dangerous adult entertainment industry where people disappear daily. But now he would face punishment, not only for the murder. The police searched his house for illegal substances and confiscated over 1,000 pills. He could have faced the death penalty for manufacturing them. However, since the police could only prove he was storing them at home, he was unlikely to receive the death penalty. However, the horror didn't end there. After Chalermchon's testimony, the police feared there might be more victims buried underground. They conducted a thorough search of Apichai's property, especially focusing on the 3 ponds. As a result, on January 16, 2020, investigators made a shocking discovery that stunned all of Thailand and turned Apichai's mansion into a real house of horrors. In the pond next to the house, they found human bones, women's clothing, as well as chains, dumbbells, and cinder blocks, which had helped the bodies sink to the bottom of their watery graves. The pond was also home to a predatory alligator fish. The divers hadn't noticed it, but it had undoubtedly helped the bodies disappear faster than they would have naturally. Considering that it was difficult to search for bones in the murky water, the investigators discussed draining the ponds. However, underground sources prevented them from pumping the water out. They had to rely on the expertise of the divers. To everyone's horror, in the following days, the divers discovered even darker secrets hidden beneath the surface. They raised from the bottom of the pond a set of iron gates weighing 70 kilograms, which fit perfectly into the entrance to Apichai's property. A large knife and around 300 fragments of human bones. The bones belonged to at least 3 women. Among them was a girl about 17 or 18 years old, as well as a very young girl, about 12 years old. Locals quickly reported that in 2011, a neighboring 12-year-old girl had gone missing. She used to play on the grounds of Apichai's property. She could have been one of his victims, but of course the man wasn't going to make things easier for the police by confirming this. In addition to everything mentioned above, on January 23rd, detectives pulled out another metal box from the water. It was sealed and weighted down with dumbbells and chains. Inside, they found another female body. This was the remains of an 18-year-old girl who had gone missing in 2011 or 2012. Interestingly, the box that Apichai had used this time had been a prop in a film made by his grandfather. However, unlike his grandfather, who had brought fame to the Ongvizit family, the grandson had tarnished it. The findings at the House of Horrors became the main news in the city. All of Bangkok was shaken, and the press dubbed Apichai with the same nickname given to a serial killer monk 100 years ago. On January 29, 2020, Apichai confessed to the murder of a foreign worker who had been helping him around the house. He buried the victim's body under a mango tree. The killer explained that they had argued, and Apichai shot the man in the leg. The victim threatened to go to the police, so Apichai, without much hesitation, shot him in the head with a shotgun. Apichai admitted to killing the worker and the girl found in his grandfather's iron box before he murdered Kukik. Thus, investigators were able to confirm the identities of 4 victims: 22-year-old Kukik, the 18-year-old girl, the foreign worker, and a 12-year-old girl. It's curious that at one point Apichai had the thought of hiding the bodies. He promised his friend Chalamchon 5,000 baht, or $150, for retrieving them from the pond. Chalamchon agreed, found a skull at the bottom, and brought it to his friend. Chalamchon was hoping for the reward, but instead of money, he received a shot in the ear from Apichai at close range. He wasn't killed, and for that, he was thankful. They never brought up the subject again. After Apichai's arrest, other victims who were lucky enough to survive were no longer afraid to speak out against him. They recalled his volatile nature and extreme cruelty, even towards his girlfriends. And if some poor soul happened to catch his eye while he was under the influence of illegal substances, self-made pills, her fate could have been far worse. For example, one victim told investigators about what happened to her in late December 2019. Apichai kidnapped her and locked her inside the notorious metal box. He released her multiple times, but only to abuse her. She might not have survived if it weren't for one incident. Apichai received a call from a female acquaintance about money. The man became furious and got distracted. The victim took advantage of the situation and managed to escape the house. She contacted a friend and fled. Apichai wasn't above bribing or intimidating his victims to prevent them from going to the police, which is why his crimes went unpunished for so long. The girls didn't believe the police would help them or take action against the wealthy heir of a prestigious family, even if he was known for his vile character. During the trial for the murder of Kiki, Apichai changed his version of events several times. Sometimes he claimed Kiki died from asphyxiation, other times from an overdose of illegal substances. At one point, he said a dumbbell accidentally fell on her chest, but none of the man's contrived explanations convinced anyone. During the trial, witnesses were no longer afraid to testify against him, and his remaining relatives refused to speak in his defense. Given the overwhelming evidence against him, the fact that no one defended him, and the possibility of the death penalty, he finally confessed to the murder of Kiki. He was also found guilty on other charges, including possession of illegal substances and weapons, and assault on another woman. The police discovered that at different times several friends, girlfriends, and even acquaintances of Apichai, who were night workers, had disappeared. However, even the most advanced technology couldn't determine exactly how many people he may have killed, though it was clear that he was a serial killer. But it was tragic for the families who still didn't know the fate of their loved ones. Except for Kiki's family. They demanded compensation and received 2.9 million baht, about $80,000. After the truth about Apichai's crimes came to light, as often happens, numerous rumors about his house of horrors emerged. Neighbors recalled seeing black circles on the pond, and while they hadn't thought much of it before, now they believed these were the spirits of the dead. Perhaps they even appeared to Apichai himself, as in late 2019, he was seen carrying food and traditional offerings to the spot where Kiki had been buried. What was once a beautiful mansion in the middle of a wonderful green garden, surrounded by ponds, once a decoration of Bangkok, now it is a place that evokes sheer terror. Only Apichai's aunt, who raised him, occasionally comes to bring offerings to the tombs to honor the deceased ancestors. No one else from the local community dares to approach the House of Horrors. Could anyone blame them? And who would dare?